Hey everybody, how's it going? Today we're going to be going over and showing you how to install the Westin R5 wheel-to-wheel Nerf bars here on a 2022 Ram 2500. So these are what our Nerf bars are going to look like installed here. So a couple things to point out. Number one, they are black, but they're also available in silver as well. So the actual body of our Nerf bars, that's actually going to be made of metal, and it has a black powder coated finish, which is really going to look really nice, and it's also going to help protect these from rust and corrosion. If you've ever had Nerf bars on your truck for an extended period of time, you know that they can sometimes be subjected to rust due to just where they are and depending on what sort of climate you look in. So having a nice durable powder coated finish on there is really going to keep these things looking new for time to come. So the actual step pads themselves are made of plastic, but one of the advantages to that is that they're actually very easy to replace if they ever get too worn or something should happen and they do break. So that's not necessarily a negative, as you may think that metal is better. The plastic still does a great job. You'll see we have all these little ridges and grooves in here. And what this does is, if we get our boots muddy or it's raining or snowing, these little ridges are going to trap all that excess material, so it's going to give a much more grippy surface. So there's all different kinds of Nerf bars and running board options on the market, but these here, I really like these personally because they have a very wide surface area here. So the R5 means they're 5 inches wide, so we have a lot of surface area here. If you guys wear work boots all the time, you'll know that these are quite bulky and big, and they don't always fit on all these step bars, but these here, no problem at all. As you can see, a fairly large and wide boot here, and I have plenty of room to get up in my truck and to get out without falling. So normally your running boards and your Nerf bars are going to end at the back of the cab here, because we usually only need 2 steps, one to get into the front doors and then one to get into the rear. So these particular Nerf bars are the wheel-to-wheel kind, meaning they span from the front of the cab all the way back to the end of our bed where our rear wheel starts. So the reason that's important is this makes it a lot easier to get in and out of your bed, especially if you have a crossover style toolbox here, or if we just need to reach something in there and get it out. You can see we have a step pad here right where our bed is, so I could easily reach in here and get what we needed in and out. So we also have a built-in rubber isolator with our system here, which is going to be back towards the bed. So that's basically like a rubber dampening mechanism that are going to prevent your steps from making any noises when you get in and out. Sometimes some of your older steps, if they're rusty or they just got too much corrosion in there, they could creak a lot when you use them, which although that may not indicate any structural issues, it can still be annoying. So having that built-in dampening there are going to ensure that your steps are going to stay nice and quiet. So one common question that we get about Nerf bars, running boards, and such of that nature is that if they have a weight capacity or not. And unfortunately, a lot of manufacturers just simply don't have a listed weight capacity, and Westin's no different here with these R5 Nerf bars. So there is no listed weight capacity, but I'm about 180 pounds, and if I just go ahead and step on these and even bounce up and down a little bit, they're pretty on there. They're on there pretty secure. I really don't see too many issues with this whatsoever. So in regards to installation, this kit here is mostly bolt-on. We do have to drill 2 holes, but that's actually only in the bottom underside of the bed channel there, so nothing visible, and it's really pretty minor if you ask me. Now unfortunately, that part back there by the bed in regards to that rubber isolator, that part can be kind of challenging because you have to reach quite a ways in there, and there really just isn't a lot of room to work. You kind of have to have 3 hands for that. So it is possible, we are able to get it done, but you're probably going to struggle with it a little bit like we were. But with that being said, we'll walk you through the entire process step by step now. So to start out your installation today, what I recommend doing is once you open up the box with all your parts, I would try to separate everything out as best as you can into the driver and the passenger side. There's a lot of miscellaneous brackets, hardware, and steps, and it kind of can be overwhelming to deal with all that at once. So just take some time to separate everything between the passenger and the driver side. Now to start our installation, we're actually going to be doing the passenger side. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to take our 3 main brackets here that look like this, and because we're working on the passenger side, we want to grab the ones that are stamped with a P. The driver's ones are going to be stamped D for driver. Now I will like to point out that our passenger side brackets are going to be the same for all 3 of them. Our driver side brackets, 2 of them are going to look like this, but the front one is going to be a little bit different. It's going to have 2 holes at the top instead of 3. So then here at the back, above our bed, we're gonna have a bracket that looks like this. These are also stamped P&D for passenger and driver. So we have this part here, and then this part. This part is not side specific. This is gonna be universal to go on either side. So we'll go ahead and basically just set all of our brackets out around the rough location where we'll be installing them. So now that we've got everything laid out, we're going to be installing these to the bottom of the rocker panel. So there's actually going to be some tape on the back side of this we need to remove to expose our holes. So we're going to go ahead and jump underneath the vehicle now so we can show you that. So underneath the vehicle here, you can see that tape that we were talking about. So there's actually going to be several pieces of tape. We actually only need to remove 3 pieces. So there's going to be one here just directly beside the cab mount, and this is going to be where the engine is. So that's going to give you sort of a location identifier. So we'll go ahead and just peel that piece of tape off, because we have our Octagon holes down here. So we have 2 more of these we need to do. So now that we have the tape removed, we're going to be starting on the bracket closest to the engine. So we're going to take one of these Certs here. They look like this. They come in your kit. We're going to install one into either of these 2 holes. It doesn't matter which. We're going to let that just sit in there. And then we're going to take a nut plate here. So how this works is the side with our nut, we're going to stick through the oblong hole. You're going to have to sort of rotate it, turn it to one side or the other in order to get it all the way into the frame. And we're actually going to be lining up the nut cert there with that Octagon hole. But you don't have to worry about lining that up just yet. We're going to take this little plastic square keeper here. And this is actually going to be used to stop the bolt from falling back into the frame. So these should just thread on if you spin them enough. And again, all this is doing is preventing that plate from falling back into the frame. There we go. So now we're going to take our front passenger side bracket here, and if you're not sure which one that is, again, just go ahead and reference the diagram in your instructions. We're going to go ahead and set the center hole onto the stud there for our nut plate, and then we're going to secure it using a M10 flat washer, split lock washer, and then we're going to loosely thread on our hex nut. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take an M8 hex bolt, a split lock washer, and a flat washer, and I'm going to turn that nut plate there in order to line up the nut on our plate between the frame and the hole in our bracket. So it can be kind of difficult to do this with one hand. Just a fair warning. But there we go. Go ahead and get that one started. And now that I have both of these 2 loosely installed, I'm going to take the same combination of bolt, split lock washer, and flat washer that I just used there, and I'm going to thread it into our Rivnut. And I'm actually snug up these 2 a little bit more by hand, and then we're going to begin tightening this bolt here, which is pretty much going to seat the Rivnut. So the Rivnut is kind of like a rivet in that the back of it is going to mushroom out when we tighten it down, which is going to hold it into the frame. So we'll go ahead and take a 13mm socket, and we'll snug that down to seat the Rivnut, and then we'll just loosely hand tighten all these hardware for now because we won't be torquing anything down just yet. That's actually our final step. So now that I have that Rivnut seated here, I've got this bracket loosely installed. So that's going to do it for this one here. Now we're just going to repeat the same process here for our other 2 brackets over here on the passenger side. There is something a little bit different with the rear one there, and we'll show you that here in a sec. So we've got our middle one mocked up here. Again, the same thing as the front one over on the passenger side. And if we work our way back to this rear bracket over here on the passenger side, again, everything is the same for the exception of the 2 small holes at the bottom here. So what we're going to do with these is you're going to take your little Allen head black zinc, or sorry, this is just actually the black one. It's not the zinc coated one. But it's an Allen head screw. It's an M6 screw. We're going to place the head through the outside of the pinch weld. But first, we need a little washer on there. And then we're going to secure it on the back with one of these flange nuts that comes in your kit. So we've got that one loosely installed there. Now I'll just come back and do that same thing for our other hole here. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to install this isolator bracket here. So this actually installs into the bottom of the bed channel closest to the cab. So in your kit, you're gonna get a little template you're gonna cut out, and you're gonna tape that to the bottom of the bed channel, and then you're gonna drill out the 2 holes in the template to a 1/2 inch. And then we're gonna take the nut plates that come in your kit here, and you're gonna install them into each of the 2 holes there. So the one closest to the outer edge of the channel, you can actually just reach your hand up there and place it in, but this one here, you actually have to use a fish wire. So we'll take our coiled in, we'll shove it through that hole that we drilled, and then out the end of the bed channel, thread on your nut plate, then pull it back down, and then you'll just secure this bracket here using the M10 flat washer, split lock washer, and hex nut. So now we're gonna take the lower half of our isolator bracket, we're gonna attach it to the bracket we just installed on the frame. So before we do that, we need to take our isolator assembly here. This comes pre-assembled in your kit. We're just gonna take this top part off here, and we're gonna stick that down and through the opening in the top of the isolator bracket. And then you're gonna take this part here and sandwich it underneath. And then we're gonna go ahead and set this up onto the vehicle. So this bolt here is actually gonna thread into a weld nut on the bottom of that isolator bracket we just installed to the frame. So it is gonna be kind of hard to see, but we're just gonna reach under there. I really can't see myself, I'm just kind of doing this by feel. So once we do have our bolt started here, we're not gonna run it down all the way. We're just gonna tighten it as much as we can by hand. So because our running boards are so long, they are gonna come in 2 different sections that we need to pre-install before we set them on the vehicle. So you should get a long side and a short side on either side of the vehicle. The long side is gonna go towards the rear, so just keep that in mind. And now we can attach the 2 running boards. Now you're gonna do this first using a step pad. So you're gonna get this step pad here that comes in your kit you need to attach. We're just gonna set that on a flat surface, and then we're pretty much just setting each side of the running board into the pegs that coming up from the bottom of that step pad. And then we're gonna be securing those little pegs there to the bottom of the board using these little self-threading nuts here. So these little metal self-threading nuts, you're gonna see that there's several of these pegs here that go through that plastic step pad, and this is what partially secures it to the bottom of the boards here. So you just want to take your time there and secure each of those little pegs. There were a couple of them under here, under these little ridges that we couldn't get to. There was really no way for us to get a nut on there, so that's totally fine. We're not going to put one on there. I don't think it's going to be a big issue, but again, I really couldn't find a way to get those on anyway, so didn't have much of a choice there. But once we have everything into position now, you're going to grab these 2 little L brackets here that come in your kit. Now they are kind of similar, but there's going to be 2 of these smaller ones and 2 of the larger ones. We need a large and a small on each side. So for our larger L bracket, we're going to be sliding it onto the bottom of the channel here in our steps. So one of these is going to be significantly wider than the other side. This definitely narrows it down, so we want to make sure we take the bigger one and place it into the larger opening. So it just kind of slides in there like so, and basically there's going to be 4 holes in that, which are going to be lining up with the 4 holes in the top, or the bottom rather, of our step. So we've got this one in. Now we're going to take the small one and we're going to go ahead and slide that in. So you'll notice this flat edge here is facing the inside for the small one, but it really should only line up one way, so you'll know whether or not you have it in correctly. Just like that. Next, we're going to take our connecting plate here that looks like this, and these 4 holes are going to line up with the 4 holes here. So the one with the ridges here, you want to make sure that's facing the opposite side of where the pad sort of wraps around the bar there, and you want to make sure that the nuts that are welded on face down. So it's pretty much going to install just like that. And now what we're going to do is you're going to get a small bag of the black hardware. These are M6 bolts. They have a split lock washer on there along with a flat washer. So I'm going to use these to secure everything together in each of our 4 corners here. So you do kind of have to reach up underneath there and put pressure on the bottom of the bracket, or just slightly maneuver it to line everything up. But then once we do have it aligned, we'll go ahead and start threading in our bolts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the outside 4 corners, because we're going to have 2 left for these 4 holes here. We don't have to do both of them, but we're going to wait until we get this assembly onto the vehicle, because we don't know which hole we're going to use quite yet. It could be these 2 or it could be those 2. So just go ahead and secure the 4 outside holes for now. So now we've got everything partially assembled, although it is still loose. We're going to go ahead and flip it up onto the brackets on the vehicle here. So in order to secure these step bars here to the brackets, you're going to take these bolts here. These hex bolts are the only ones you get in your kit that looks like this. There should be a total of 4 of them. And you're going to be securing these 2 holes here in the bottom of this plate with those 2 holes there in our center bracket. So you may need to sort of move things around a little bit to get them to align a little bit better. Usually the first ones are going to be the hardest. So now we're going to secure our other attachments here. So we should have 3 more of these brackets left. So that's what these little guys are for, and how this works is you're basically just going to stick them in at an angle, twist them, and then they should line up with the 2 holes. We can slide them back and forth in the channels to do that. So there's one there. Now we have 2 more. So now we'll begin loosely securing everything. So we're going to take the black hardware, the M8 hardware. You're going to place a flat washer over the nut plate, a split lock washer, and then you're going to thread on a hex nut. And then once we do this plate here, we're obviously just going to repeat this same process there for our remaining plates here on the bottom. So again, 2 back here, and then 1 in the front. So now I've got everything loosely secured on the bottom, and if you remember, I wasn't sure which of these 2 holes we were going to have open. You can see these 2 are going to be blocked here by this bracket. So we'll go ahead and insert your remaining 2 M6 fasteners into the 2 open holes that you have. So now we can start torquing everything down. Now the torque specifications are going to be found in your instructions. We're going to start with those 6 bolts there on the bottom, those tiny M6 ones. So we're going to take a 10mm socket, we're going to snug all those up and then torque them down to spec. Now we'll switch over to a 13mm socket and tighten all of our M8 bolts at the bottom here, securing each of our brackets to our step. So now we're going to come underneath the vehicle here to the inside, and we'll start tightening the frame brackets which secure the boards to our pinch welds here. So we're just going to take a 13mm socket. I'm going to tighten down these 2 bolts here first. Then we'll take a 16mm socket and we'll tighten down the stud up top. So now that we have everything snug, we'll come back with our torque wrench here and tighten everything down to spec. So the last thing we do is install these covers here, and how these work is they're going to go between the Nerf bar and the pinch weld of the body there. They're actually going to attach to this bracket, so you're just going to slide them into position as best as you can. Just like that. So then you're going to go ahead and line up. There's going to be 2 holes drilled into this bracket, and there's going to be several drilled into our little plastic divider here. So what we're going to do is we're just going to find one that lines up best with our specific application here. And then we're going to install the bolt through one side and come out the other to lock it in place. So just like that. We're just using the M6 hex bolts that come in your kit. You'll have a flat washer on either side and then a nylock nut We'll go ahead and start tightening these down, but you can sort of adjust the angle of the bracket as well before you get everything nice and snug. But we'll just use 10mm socket or 10mm wrenches here so we can tighten those up. And again, before I get too tight, I'm going to make sure that we have the angle right here on our bracket. I want it to kind of sit about like that. So we went ahead and installed our other two covers as well for a total of 3 on each side. But now that we've got the passenger side knocked out, we'll go ahead and do the same few steps over on the driver's side. So there is one small difference over here on the driver's side, and it's only going to be for that front back bracket just directly under the driver's side seat here. So this one's a little bit different. It actually looks different than the other brackets that come in your kit because it only has 2 holes, whereas the other brackets we're installing have 3 holes. So again, this is going to be a little bit different. So basically, we're going to repeat the same process as we would for the 3-hole bracket by taking one of these nut plates here, installing it into that hole, and then using this little plastic holder here to stop it from falling back down. And then you're going to take one of the 3-hole brackets and you're going to hold it up here at an angle. That way you can take one of your M8 bolts and seat one of the Riv Certs there for that side. And then you're just going to repeat that same process for the other side. So basically, we're just going to be using this 3-hole bracket here to seat both of our Riv Certs because that's how this bracket here attaches with only 2 holes. So now that we have the driver's side knocked out, that's going to do it today for our look and installation of the Westin R5 wheel-to-wheel Nerf bars here on a 2022 Ram 2500.